2.
Yes, good morning, Dan. So glad to finally visit with you.
I'm telling you, until we have some prolonged pain, until we have some failures, until we have some organizations that are struggling and don't get bailed out, until the Fed says, not only do I have to stop easing, but I got to start raising interest rates, until we start seeing that kind of stuff and have pain, and we force the hand of Congress and the legislature to do something to create incentives and growth in the economy the way it should be, nothing's going to change.
God bless you, and thank you so much for your show.
The opinions and recommendations expressed by Dan are his own and do not necessarily represent the opinions of this station or any of the show's sponsors.
Welcome back, American Family Radio Network. My name's Dan Celia. It's great to be here. Financial Issues is the program. I got to mention this, and I'm going to get right back to the phones, but our highlighted senator this week, which I didn't mention, for those of you who are just tuning in new every week, we are highlighting a person in the House of Representatives or a senator, some Republicans, some Democrats, that are supporting Obamacare. Senator Mark Begich is who we're highlighting this week. He's from Alaska. He can't run away from it. He said in a town hall meeting a couple of weeks ago that, well, you know, he's all for it and he's going to be a part of it too because, of course, all of Congress has to be a part of it. And, of course, he never mentioned the fact that they've been exempt from it now as of the last 4 or 5 weeks. Never mentioned that. So he's not going to be a part of it. He's not going to be a part of it because he never wanted to be a part of it because they know what's in it now. And they realize as part of the royalty of the United States of America, they should not be a part of what us commoners have to be a part of. And they're not now. They have been set apart. They, of course, are the leadership of the United States of America. They should not be a part of anything that the commoners would be a part of. Well, they got their wish, and they're not a part of it anymore, even though the law clearly states that they must be a part of it. That doesn't matter. We have a president now that has a line item kind of veto on what is and is a part of a law that's already been passed and upheld. Doesn't matter. But Senator Mark Begich is okay with that, and our goal is to see that he gets defeated, as everybody should be that is supporting Obamacare. And there's far more Republicans that support it right now than Democrats because of their lack of backbone to defund it. Well, we can't defund it. That's part of an entitlement program. Okay. Well, they better rewrite then the bylaws and the Constitution of the House of Representatives, who holds the purse strings for everything. They better. Can we do that first before they start misrepresenting their job to the American people? Can we at least rewrite things? But anyway, I'm asking you to go to our website, financialissues.org. Go to the website, financialissues.org. In the bottom left corner, there is a box called Accountability Corner. We have all of his phone numbers and his information there. Would you place a call to one of his offices, all of his offices, and let him know that you will be doing everything you can, if not voting, but maybe not voting his district, but doing everything you can to make sure he doesn't get reelected and not supporting him. And it's important that we do that because it's not just that we do everything we can to make sure these people don't get reelected. It's that we send a message that we are doing everything to make sure they don't get reelected. It's very interesting, isn't it, over Syria? Isn't this very interesting? Listen today. You'll notice this now that I'm saying it. Listen today to how many are talking about all the phone calls they're getting against it. Oh, they're to all the phone. It's amazing how they can count those phone calls. But for some reason, the phone calls they get about Obamacare and defunding it, they don't ever get any of those phone calls. They can't remember whether, well, there was 2 or 3 or maybe a couple people, I don't know. It's amazing, isn't it? It's kind of like the Constitution, how they quote the Constitution when it backs up something they're trying to push through. Then they're all about the Constitution, and then the rest of the time they ignore it. It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? It's especially beautiful when you don't have the people that hired them holding them accountable, and that's why we've got to step up to the plate. Make sure we start doing that. Now, let me get back to the phones. Let me go to Darlene. Darlene's calling us from Texas. Hey, Darlene.
Hi, Dan. We got cut off yesterday when talking about my IRA plan, where all my money's at.
Okay.
I know you talk a lot against mutual funds.
Yes.
And I spoke about, I have Chevron stock. I have very little Chevron stock. Schwab has most of my money in mutual funds.
Oh,
and I'm
okay.
getting this sick feeling in my gut that I need to sell and put it in cash for right now.
Mm-hmm.
With all this stuff going on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think, listen, especially if you've got some stock mutual funds that they probably have done okay this year and are up, and now would be a perfect time to move out of that and start thinking about going into cash in the money market until the dust settles and we see what's happening. We are going to see a pullback. I don't know when. That's the problem. If I knew when, that would be a beautiful thing, but I don't. But I do know that it's coming, and we need to be prepared for it. And not only prepared from the standpoint that we try to preserve what we have in preventing the losses, but we need to be prepared in the sense that we're ready to move and start to get into some things that are going to be beneficial to us for the next 10 years. So very, very important. So, and if you have any bond mutual funds for certain, you should have been out of those months ago. You should definitely be out of those as well. So, yes, look, follow your gut instincts. Start to move out of some of those things. Listen, my problem with mutual funds, for all of those who don't know, my problem is that they're not biblically responsible. And I don't believe we ought to be putting our money into pornography, into abortion. I don't think we should be putting our money into things, or God's money that he's entrusting us to be good stewards of, into those things. See, it's about time that Christians put their money where their morals are and stop investing in the very things that they detest, that because they know God detests them, yet we do it anyway, and we've got to stop. So, and I stopped 25 years ago, and I haven't been biblically responsible all of my career, but I came to the Lord late in life, and I realized if I was going to stand on certain convictions, that I've got to do it in every walk and every part of my life, and I can no longer compartmentalize. Folks, if you haven't gotten a book, I hate to do this shameless plug, but I wrote a book called The Fear of Money, Have We Separated Our Finances from Our Faith? The answer to that question is yes, we have. And we better stop. You can get the book. If you go to my website, go through those banners, I think it's the fourth one in or something, it'll come up eventually, financialissues.org. If you can order that book just to the end of this month for any donation to the ministry, you can get that book. But more importantly, you need to get the book and you need to read it. I had a church order 6,000 copies of it. I had a mutual fund company order 6,000 copies of it and send it to every one of their brokers. It's a book you ought to read so that we can get stop this compartmentalizing that we do. So that's why I'm against mutual funds. Are there some good ones out there from a performance standpoint? Sure there are. No denying that. But I'd rather create my own mutual fund through a series of individual bonds and stocks and that are biblically responsible and that we know that. Now, you can't, how do you do that? Well, the only way one way you can do that is you can track with me on my website at financialissues.org, or you can find somebody, a broker that can help you do that. So you're on the right track, Darlene. That's what I would do.
You mean keep the Chevron stock? Just get rid
yes,
of
keep the
mutual
Chevron
funds?
stock. No, keep the Chevron stock. Yep, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Dan.
Darlene.
God bless you.
All right, I appreciate you. Thank you. Let me go to Kenneth from Texas. Hey, Kenneth.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kenneth. Yes,
yeah,
yes,
listen,
sir.
One of your calls just called. I want to ask: is really the federal? It has the name Federal Reserve Bank. Is it really a government bank, or is it privately owned?
It's privately owned.
Huh?
It's privately owned. It's privately owned.
Yes. Okay.
It is. Is a private?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, that's what I was telling the caller. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and also I've read, and how the Bank of Rome creates money out of nothing. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
So we're in the same boat. Then we're in the same track on the train here. So people understand this. That how the Bank of Rome creates money out of nothing, and how they do it, and it's like either a 5-step procedure how this is done.
Correct. And it's not just it's all central banks. All central banks right now in the world create money from nothing. It is based upon the full faith and credit of that government. It's called fiat currency. It's worthless. It has no backing except the full faith and credit. And that's why when I talked about yesterday the lawsuit, remember I brought up that story about the lawsuit that against the S&P that the Justice Department, and I talked about yesterday how when that happened months ago, I said earlier this year when it started, I said it was nothing but a Gestapo-like fear tactic to put the fear in every other ratings agency this is what you do. This is what happens when you downgrade the full faith and credit of the United States of America like the S&P did. And now, yesterday, it came out that the S&P is finally figuring that out and is filing a complaint this is a lawsuit based on a revenge type tactic for what they've done. And that's exactly what it is. And you know what? I said yesterday mistakenly that, of course, now everybody's going to be talking about it. Right? I mean, I said that yesterday because I was annoyed because nobody had thought of that, which I know they did, but nobody had thought about that when it happened and wasn't talking about it. And now I guess everybody's going to talk about it. Guess what? I was wrong. Nobody's still talking about it. Nobody's going there. Nobody's going there. I don't know if they're afraid. And if they're afraid, then the administration wins. But nobody's talking about it. And the only one's still talking about it. And how pathetic is that? But you're absolutely right, Kenneth. We're creating out of nothing. That started in 1972 when we went off the gold standard, when we had something backing our dollars. The reason why we issue debt, because we can't run the printing press and just print money without putting it into circulation and monetizing it. And the only way you can monetize it, because by monetizing, in other words, by selling the debt, it gives it value, supposedly. And that's called monetizing it. So we have to issue debt. We can't just print the money and throw the money out to the banks. We have to monetize it, which means somebody is buying the debt. And when we are printing at a much faster pace, then we can monetize it because China, Japan, and other nations aren't buying the U.S. debt I'm not going to say to the same extent they were 10 years ago, but they're not buying it at the same pace that we are printing. In comes the Fed. And it's why I look so smart, which is not the case at all, when I said 4 years ago, there will always be quantitative easing as long as we can't pay our bills. Because when nobody else is buying our debt at the frenzy pace that we are printing dollars, the Fed's got to buy it just to stay in existence. There will always be. And when quantitative easing 1 started, I said, get used to it because it's not temporary. I know the Fed said it is. It isn't. And then QE2, I said it's not temporary. I know the Fed says that it is. And then QE3, which QE3, they didn't call it quantitative easing, but it was a time that the Fed bought some very specific bonds, but it was QE3. QE3 started, they said it was temporary. I said it isn't. Then we got QE forever, which is what we're in now. So they may taper some, but how long can that taper be? Well, it can't be too long if we don't see a pickup in the economy to the extent where the federal government is receiving a greater amount of income because of a thriving economy. And the Fed is never going to see that. Is never going to see that at the rate that we are going right now without a robust job market and a strong fundamentals of the economy. They're never going to see that. And they're never going to see that when Obamacare is creating 130 new bureaucracies that they've got to spend money on. So they keep increasing what they're spending, thereby increasing the need they have for income. You get it? Simple, right? We'll be right back. We're going to go to break. We're going to go to the news. When we get back, we're going to get right to the phones. 866-300-9298. Financial Issues. I'm Dan Celia. We'll be right back.
American